Art is where what we survive survives. The Palace, Kava Akbar. The Daily Grind, Chapter 176. The last weekend of November had been, for as long as Alana could remember, a long weekend. Thanksgiving in her country was one of those holidays where it was, by design, perfectly placed to make schools throw up their hands and go, "Fine, you can have Friday off too, I guess." And it had always been welcome when she was in high school. Mostly because she'd had a part-time job to help take care of her younger sisters, and it was a couple days when almost everything was still open, but the rest of her friends were doing family stuff, so she could pick up shifts without feeling like she was missing anything. After leaving high school and almost losing touch with her friends as half of them went off to college while she went off to learn how to replace a radiator, the long weekend changed a bit. She worked somewhere that actually did take Thanksgiving off, and everyone she cared about had sort of drifted away from their families, or didn't have access to them. So it became a time when she could, guilt-free, spend days with her friends, just catching up and actually being friends. And then life had happened. A few years, a few fights, a little magic, and all of a sudden it hadn't been much of a thing for her anymore. The last year or two it had just been another day, and Alana had either been in the middle of fighting some weird monster, or just distracted with something more important. Her work and her life were the same now, and her friends were a family that surrounded her constantly. She didn't need a special day for it, even though they'd had a fancy dinner anyway. All of this was preamble to the fact that it was deeply ironic that she was, on Thanksgiving, in a high school, working, because the wireless cameras they had left up by the dungeon entrance had all been disabled one by one, and then Lua had called and reported something rat-roach-shaped moving through the school's halls. "Radio's on," Alana said, checking that they were sharing a frequency. "Alex, Matt, Sarah, you're Group 1. Tyrone, you're with me. We're Group 2. Lua, you're also with us." Lua, who had let them into the lower level, added her own comment. "Please be careful," she said. "There's still staff in the building." "Okay, we'll sweep upstairs first. You guys get the cafeteria, ground floor," Alana directed, pointing. "I really don't want to fight the police today again, so try to look professional if anyone stops you. Keep your guns hidden, okay?" "Yes, ma'am," Sarah gave Alana a dramatic sailor's salute. Alana frowned at her friend. "Hey, come on, be a little serious here. This is our responsibility," she chided. Not unfriendly, not really, but Alana was a little bit on edge. After all, the whole problem was the result of the Order running experiments, as far as they knew. "Alana, you are my best friend, and I love you." Sarah was best friends with at least 6 people. "But you put me on a hunting squad. Me. Me." Sarah pirouetted a little to show off her lithe form. "Don't get me wrong, this place is gross. I'm here to help, but you should have picked someone else if you wanted a professional fighter." Tyrone leaned around Alana, keeping his voice low, like they were on a delve. "Hey, I know I'm not around the lair much, but do we even have professional fighters? Seems kind of fucky for us, you know?" "We do not," Alana said. "That's why you're all here. No one in the Order actually likes fighting. You're just the most experienced people available right now." Matt cleared his throat and raised a hand with a cocky confidence. "I like fighting," he informed her. Alana eyed the young man suspiciously. Brown hair, trimmed short, big nose that looked like it had been broken at least once, bomber jacket and boxer wraps on his hands. "I believe you," she said, deciding not to add that she didn't really believe that was the whole story. If he was an active response member, there had to be more to it than that. Whatever response actually was, one thing that they for certain were trying to do was to be better than the police. And part of that was, they really just didn't recruit people who actually liked fighting that much. "So how many rat roaches?" Alex broke the awkward silence, asking Lua the question she had missed in the briefing. She also left out that she kinda liked the fighting too, or at least the excitement of it. "1, 2, more?" "I don't know," Lua admitted. "At least one. I've seen it around lurking. Some of the small rats, too." Here was one thing the Order knew. If you left a dungeon alone long enough, it started to get creative. For the Akashic Sewer, getting creative meant opening a new entrance somewhere and firing a handful of monsters out into the school like organic bullets, a shotgun spread of problems, though for what purpose they didn't really know. It had happened once, and the Order had mostly kept it from happening again, but they needed to know more real facts about the process. So, under the most vigilant observation they could keep in the public and in-use building, they let the dungeon sit. Mostly because the last time it had taken over a month, and Reed had figured the outburst would happen over winter break. But this time, the dungeon moved fast. 2 weeks of inactivity, and it was spewing out creatures that were now stalking the halls. They'd noticed within minutes, and now Alana was here with everyone she could grab to deal with it. Okay, stay alert, let's move. These things aren't exactly subtle, so as long as we sweep the building a couple times, we should get them all. And then, we're not doing this again until summer, and Reed can take it up with me if he complains. She said the last part without considering that there weren't any actual research members here to pass on that memo. She'd have to do it herself later. The two teams wished each other good luck, put on the random assortment of vision-enhancing glasses they had, and pivoted to take different parts of the school. Rubber safety strips on the stairs squeaked under Alana's boots as she climbed, wincing at the noise in the empty building. There was a weird qualitative difference between the emptiness of Officium Mundi and the emptiness of a mundane structure like this. Here was a place that was empty because people were just temporarily not around. No magic, no weirdness, it was a building, but lacking all the life and context of its actual normal operations. It was strangely tense. The office felt tense because it was never normal, and it was full of hostile things that wanted to eat her, and sometimes cute things you could make friends with, or ugly things you could make friends with. Alana mentally bopped herself on the head as she remembered that the rat roaches were, or at least could be, people. Hey, someone over there. Tyrone nudged her with an elbow, pointing across the railing and the gap that showed the ground floor to the other side of the school, where motion could be seen through one of the classroom windows. Think they see anything? Good question, Alana said. Good call. Lewis, stay between us, okay? Don't have to tell me twice, the unfortunately battle-hardened therapist softly mumbled. The three of them moved to circle the upper walkway, Alana trying to take smaller steps so the others could keep up. She kept her eyes open as they passed by the big metal security doors that led into the depths of the school and the maze of classrooms that lived there. Which was good, because it was why, when the rat roach exploded out from around a corner, trying to drive a splintered chunk of a table leg into her neck, Alana was kind of already ready. She caught the creature's arm, one of them anyway. The other three, why did it have one more than normal, came around in a roughly coherent wide swing, a trio of awkward haymakers aimed for her exposed side. Alana just let them impact, counting on the fact that the individual rat roaches really didn't have that much muscle mass to keep her safe. Well, that and the thick leather of the coat she was wearing. The awkwardly clenched fists thudded into her side, one hitting her in the side of the head, the other two sliding off the coat without even stinging. This rat roach's chitinous three-fingered hands just weren't suited for making fists with. Alana didn't react to the strike that had hit, instead grabbing that arm too and glaring down at the disordered, rodent face of the monster that was trying to kill her. She didn't know what she was looking for. Intelligence, maybe? Some hint of a thought beyond anger? Or maybe whatever spark it was that powered a person, something they could nurture and grow if it was there. Alana didn't see anything but a slavering hate, though. Her empathy let her see pretty deeply into other people's emotions, and for the rat roaches, the emotions weren't even real. Not exactly, not the same way that human ones were, or even other rat roach ones. This rat roach hissed wetly, spraying drops of acidic spittle onto her coat, struggling to free the arms that she'd pinned while snapping at her, kicking frantically. All it actually wanted to do was hurt her. By the time Alana had assessed it, Tyrone had moved Lua back with an outstretched arm and was reaching for his weapon, but Alana shook her head at him. "I got this," she said. It was almost sad how badly put together the thing was, and how, one-on-one, Alana wasn't even sure one of them could hurt her. She wrenched its arms forward, and when the rat roach stumbled on its mismatched digitigrade legs, she spun it, wrapped an arm around its throat, and then squeezed until chitin and bone popped and snapped, crushing its neck until its struggles stopped and she dropped the now dead shell to the floor, a few red sparks flowing from it into her hand. "Jesus," Tyrone muttered. "That's fucking terrifying." "They aren't very good independent hunters," Alana shrugged. "Don't let them catch you by surprise. If you need to, go for breaking arms or hitting their torso. Their organs are pretty fragile. They're not that scary." "Yeah, that's not what I meant," Tyrone said, quietly enough that only Lua heard him. They grabbed the light body and hauled it out to their van in the parking lot. Leaving this behind was just dangerous, both from a security perspective and because letting something with acid blood lay dead on the floor of a high school sounded fucking stupid. Then they jogged back and continued the sweep. The trio ran into one teacher, working late in the computer lab. Lua greeted him by name, and he gave a nervous look at the two knights behind her. Alana had peeked at him with the affiliation glasses she was wearing, but he just read as a normal high school teacher. "Don't worry," Lua told him, with more confidence than she really felt. "I'm fine this time. They're here to help. But also, maybe a long lunch break." She cleared her throat dramatically. "Off campus?" The other teacher nodded, his shiny bald head glowing under the lights. "Yeah," he agreed. "Yeah, I could go for some salad," he said, grabbing his coat and vacating the building. Quickly. Just in time, too. They ran into another rat roach just down the hall from his office, prowling around the corner of a row of lockers. Tyrone hit it with a chair. When they were just finishing their first circuit of the upstairs, the unmistakable noise of gunshots rang out from somewhere below. Sharing a glance and a quick plan, Alana left the other two to catch up and bolted to join the other team. She arrived to an ongoing crisis, but not the one she'd expected. On the concrete ramp leading down to the lower levels of the school, the band and drama rooms, there were two dead rat roaches. Their bluish-pale blood splattered in the kind of rough sprays you got when you shot something and the bullet pierced straight through. Slightly past them, near the door to the boiler room where they had first found this idiot dungeon's portal, Alex and Matt stood with guns drawn pointed farther down the ramp, while Sarah stood farther back with her hands raised, saying something in a calming voice. Probably trying to talk down the cop that was pointing a gun back at them. Alana slowed her pace. Going into this as a sprint would be a dumb move herself. Instead, she took a deep breath, steadied herself, and walked onto the scene like she owned the place. "Officer Rourke, good to see you again," Alana said, calmly, almost cheerfully. The gun pivoted to face her, and she mentally nudged her shield bracer to match the caliber of bullet. The bracers, it turned out, could only actually protect against things they had seen before, but it wasn't hard to add 9mm bullets to the list for every single one of them. "Hands in the air," the cop barked. "No," Alana said. "Do you not remember us?" she asked. "I mean, we haven't met personally, but you know who we are. We've talked before." The man stared at her, narrowed eyes flickering between Alana and the others. At the top of the ramp, Tyrone and Lua caught up, but stayed back as Alana held a hand back. The school's resident police officer was sweating, forehead furrowed as his hands trembled on his gun. "I don't... What?" "Lua," Alana said softly, not taking her eyes off the panicking man. "You have Planner in your head, right?" "Of course," the counselor answered. "What? Oh, no. He's been infected?" "Think so," Alana said. She was confident, though, even if she didn't say it. She could feel, broadcasting off the man in sick waves, the level of confusion and doubt he was feeling about himself, about reality. He was terrified. "Rourke!" She put a command into her voice, something for him to latch onto. "Your head's been fucked with. You probably know it. My friend here can help you, but you need to put that gun down. No. No, no, you're not supposed to be here. The school is... The school... The officer squeezed his eyes shut, bringing one hand up to massage his forehead. What's happening to me? He asked. I remember you. His voice came out as a hoarse yell. Alana stepped past Matt and Alex, pushing their raised weapons down. Sarah, back up, please, she muttered, getting her friend out of the line of fire. Rourke, listen. We can help. Let us help. You know something's wrong. Just hand over the gun. The officer's eyes flashed with anger as she said that, but Alana could tell he wasn't really feeling it. Her empathy, granted by the dungeon below, actually, let her push exactly far enough. She knew almost precisely where to step forward and take the gun out of his grip without him firing a shot. And she did so. Right on time. Lua, she called back. The therapist came rushing forward at her name. Behind her, a quartet of geometric tentacles formed, reaching forward into the space around Officer Rourke. Don't be afraid, Lua said in a calming voice. We've got you. Yes. Planner's pen scratch of a voice drifted through the hall. Multiple memory eaters. Removed, removed, removed. The words were each punctuated by one of the tentacles tearing something out of the air around Rourke. Ethereal splatters flaring across the walls before small bursts of red sparks filtered into Planner's space. Something else, deeper. Memories ruined, but there's a command here, something giving orders. He has been compromised heavily. Officer, do you consent to me attempting to remove the intruder? Oh, God, my head feels... Rourke doubled over, clutching at his stomach and forehead. I can think. I want to fucking puke. Officer, the infomorph repeated. Hey, Rourke, let Planner do his job, Alana urged. Please? Sarah asked from behind her friend where she'd crept back into the scene. Fuck, the officer stabilized himself on the concrete block wall. Yeah, do it, before something changes my mind again. Planner's tentacles didn't hesitate, darting into Rourke's chest in wispy blue light motion. The officer opened his mouth in a silent scream, dropping to his knees before a second later one tentacle pulled away, half gone, trailing ghostly blood. The other came out holding the immaterial concept of the shape of a bully. Planner ripped it in half, a fountain of red light pouring into their remaining tentacles. I have to go now. This hurts. Planner's voice sounded strained, confused in a way that Alana had never heard before. The infomorph, just like the rest of them, wasn't really a professional fighter. Rourke grunted as he pulled himself up, watching as Planner disappeared, fading away behind Lua again. Okay, hi, he wheezed out. What the fuck was that? Infomorph, Alana said. And that's bad. The dungeon was using you as a guard dog. That is fucking scary. We need to get a defense against that up now. Matt, Tyrone, can you get the bodies to the car? Sarah, teleport back. Get a purple. We need... I don't even know what we need. They moved to follow her orders, as if she knew what she was doing, even though she had openly admitted that she didn't. It wanted me to hunt something, Rourke chimed in, wiping drool off the side of his mouth. Hey, again. It was in my head, telling me I had to kill something. His head slid sideways, his gaze locked on the boiler room door. Something in there, I think. That's where it was taking me. He half whispered. Alana gave the man an appraising look. Rourke, she started to say, trying to figure out what to say as she spoke. What were you even supposed to tell somebody in a situation like this? Alana was bad at this sort of thing. She knew, in her bones, that there was no point to having power if you weren't going to use it to fix shit, but she had had a hard time figuring out where to start for most of her life. She wasn't really like James, who just plowed headfirst into situations and sorted it out later. It was part of what she loved about him, bit aspirational even. Her boyfriend often had a point about how doing good recklessly was often the best way to go. Alright, man, Alana said. Want a job? What? Look, you're obviously a bad cop. You put the gun down instead of yelling and shooting us, and that's with a good excuse. Alana felt a lot of bitter regret sneak into her words at that. We need someone to watch this place. You work here. You've got a cover. Join up. We'll get you a shield against that ever happening to you again, and you can actually help keep people safe. It's a good deal. Everybody wins. She could have grinned if she wasn't controlling her expression carefully. She felt it off of him, so obvious when the magic let her see. Alana knew the moment she said it that he wanted, so badly, to say yes. No, no, the officer said instead. I can't just quit. Oh, don't quit, Alex added. Alana means pretend to be a cop and keep getting paid to be a cop, but actually do something useful instead. You can quit later. The young girl shrugged. Or, stick around and get brainwashed by a dungeon again. Alex, please, Lewis sighed. I mean, she's right, Alana shrugged. Your call, though. Rourke had already decided. He just needed the excuse to say yes, and Alana knew it. All right, the not really a police officer said. Yeah, all right. He glanced down at Alana's hand. Can I, have my gun back? Huh? Oh, sure. She handed it over, just as Sarah snapped back into existence at the top of the ramp, carrying a small, glowing purple orb. All right, man, you ready for your life to get weird? My life was weird before, Rourke said. I was going to call you guys anyway, but I guess something called me first, huh? Don't be overdramatic. Alana rolled her eyes. We already have a guy for that. Sarah slid to a stop in front of him. Okay, quick check. Do you consent to sharing your mental space with a symbiotic entity that will eventually grow into an individual person who you will be responsible for? What? We're gonna make a living creature and put it in your brain, Sarah cheerfully announced. You'll be responsible for raising them to be a good person, if it comes to that. It might not, though. They might stay dormant, then fade away eventually, but either way, your consent matters. Oh. Rourke looked over at Lua, staring into the air around her. That's what, that was? Sarah nodded back at him. Does it hurt? Not at all, Lua told him, reassuringly. Planner is very polite, though they live in a lot of us, and you hardly notice unless you're talking to them. It's an interesting experience, but one that I find has value. Lua nodded. And not just because they're a protector, but also a companion. Someone close to us all. If you'll excuse me, I think I'm going to go check on them. She nodded politely and excused herself. All right, Rourke said, turning back to Sarah. Do it. He made the decision that would change his life. Sarah hopped from one foot to the other, excited energy bleeding into her motions, the fight and pointed guns already forgotten, as she pulled the orb up to her face and whispered something into it that Alana couldn't hear. The orb collapsed into a streamer of glittering dust, the ribbon flowing from Sarah's hand and into Rourke's head. She waited for all of it to move out of her grip and into the officer before she clapped her hands. Done, she announced. I don't feel different, Rourke said. Yeah, you won't, Alana told him. It's kind of the scary part, but they'll protect you, and you'll see them in your dreams if you look. Be kind, she ordered the officer, who nodded solemnly back at her, not understanding that she was joking, though only partly joking. All right, one last thing, before we do another sweep and get out of here. She turned to the boiler room door. What's behind door number 1? Alana wasn't stupid. She waited for Matt and Tyrone to get back, having dumped the other rat roach corpses and gotten most of the blood off their hands before it could burn through their gloves and skin. Sarah stepped back, keeping an eye on their new potential recruit and carrying on a soft conversation with the man about a infomorph upbringing, while Alana moved to the door. The boys pulled their own guns and flanked her, while Alex grabbed the handle and waited for a nod to open it. The heavy metal swung open heavily, but without a sound. Alana, in a crouch at the front of their group, was the first to see inside. A couple large water tanks, a nest of copper pipes, dust, a chemical scent. The place was the same as when they'd first checked it out, though it was missing the dark gash in the wall, covered in pipes that led down into nowhere. Except this time. Shit! Matt's exclamation cut through the air, and he had his gun up before Alana could stop him. Alex, seeing him moving, yanked the door the rest of the way open and spun to cover the side with her own pistol. Inside, something was lurking, curled up under one of the boilers, an obviously inhuman shape, waited. Wait! Alana snapped. Both of them froze, fingers on triggers. Because Alana could feel what other people felt. She'd been doing it all day. She didn't ever really turn it off. She couldn't really turn it off. She tested the rat roaches, examined Rourke, even used it to keep an eye on her companions and friends. All people were empathic. Alana just turned that empathy up to 11. Which means she could feel the wounded monster hiding in the boiler room. She knew what it felt, and it wasn't anger, it wasn't hate, it wasn't any of the normal expressions of madness that the dungeon seeded its life with. There were no false emotions here, covering up an empty void. No, this one was afraid. Wait, Alana said, firmer this time, but also quieter. Everyone back. She waited for them to move, giving a reassuring nod to Matt's questioning look. It's fine. I don't think... Look, the dungeon wanted this one dead, right? Let's not start with shooting. The others moved back, but kept her covered. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw Sarah put a hand on Rourke's shoulder, keeping the tense officer from joining in, which Alana definitely appreciated. He might be a new addition to their ranks, but for now, he was still an outsider. He was, for now, a normal person, who was going to have a normal person's approach to seeing monsters, and Alana didn't want him interfering. Alana stepped forward and hesitantly crossed the threshold of the room, feeling the stuffy heat of the place, and also catching the smell of sharply acidic blood. Hey there, she said quietly, kneeling down to look at the curled-up life form. It was covered with black. Fur, she thought at first, but no, a closer look showed it was feathers, uneven, patchy, almost dripping with some kind of slimy substance in places, but mostly feathers. I'm not going to hurt you, Alana said. Can you talk? The creature partly uncurled from its ball, and Alana stifled a hiss. Oversized and misplaced insectile eyes looked up at her from a broken face. A red, infected gash running down the feathered flesh and into one of its pained eyes. A black beak, cracked on one side and hanging open loosely, drew the eye to the rest of the face. A handful of antennae, or feelers perhaps, sprayed out from the back of the creature's head like hair blown in the wind, half of them snapped in half. Its body was too thin, compressed in two places to something far too narrow, bones and exoskeleton clashing in the half-crow, half-wasp form. Alana could see its legs, 4 of them, sticking out from under the boiler, and noted that all of them ended with wicked-looking stingers. Or at least one of them did. The others probably used to, but those stingers had been shattered or snapped off, leaving just jagged chunks of what might be chitin. The monster opened its mouth and made a buzzing noise up at her that ended with a wet, choking sound, a mix between a warning and a sob. It didn't take Alana's brain long to figure out what she was looking at. The dungeon had sent out its rat roaches and unleashed its human attack dog early, because it was hunting for something that had escaped it. Alex, go get me a blanket and a bottle of water from the van. My armor, too. If I'm going to carry this one out of here, I don't want to get stabbed by accident, Alana said calmly without turning her head, and then added, or on purpose either, just in case. Really? Matt asked her, incredulous. Hey, don't be a dick, man, Tyrone chastised him. You work with Camercondas. Yeah, but... I'm on it. Alex cut them off, and then, before leaving, addressed Alana directly. Just, you sure about this? Alana snorted a laugh, drawing a flinch from the thing hiding under the boiler. What's the point of being strong if you don't help people? She asked them. It was a question that she felt like she'd known the answer to all along. All right, what are today's problems? Reed asked the assembled members of research. Almost everyone was in today. 18 of their 22 human members and all 4 of the new Camercondas who had recently taken an interest in providing an alternative perspective. Planner was asleep, still recovering from something that was apparently terrible, and a couple of their human members were either sleeping in, working response shifts, or just skipping the meeting. It made for a crowded basement, so Reed had opted to hold this one in the briefing room. Not everything is us causing problems. Davis folded his arms over his suit jacket, looking profoundly out of place among the crowd of late 20s and early 30s that made up the majority of research's population. Sometimes we do solve problems. All right, fine, Reed sighed, having already lost control of the meeting. Have we solved any problems this week? Yeah, actually. A voice he didn't hear much chimed in. John was one of those people who had been critically important in getting stuff done and keeping things organized, but never really had any splashy results like building weird totems or puzzling out what magic items did. So when he spoke up, Reed was kind of instantly interested, just to see what the other human had to bring to the table. What do you got for us? He asked, genuinely curious. Well, I think I managed to actually put together enough of the status quo documents to give us an answer on them, John said, seeming to wither a little under the attention of the collected research division. The guy didn't like being in the spotlight at all. But you couldn't just say something like that and not have everyone perk up. Really? Mikhail leaned over, butting between 2 of their younger interns, both of the high schoolers shoving him back with a generally playful attitude. What'd you learn? Well, I mean, I've been learning this whole time, or I guess cataloging mostly, John admitted. But it's more that I think I have a bigger picture view of them and the answer that we were looking for. Well, an answer. Alright, I'm curious too. What did you find? Reed prompted. I think they're artificial, John said. As in, fake? Because I think... Somebody started to reply, sounding angry at John's implication. No, no! The young man got defensive quickly, and Reed prepared to step in if needed to defuse the situation. John was quick on the explanation, though, and everyone quieted as he kept talking. What I mean is, the documents all make it look like... I don't think they formed themselves, you know? I think that something else pushed them into forming, maybe even fabricated a history for them to believe, because none of the paperwork is actually that old. It only goes back maybe 10 years, the real stuff anyway. Even the references and stuff, they literally could not be older than that. Not if they actually kept files like this, and I've read all of it. Some real emotion aside from nervousness was in that last sentence. John had put a lot of hours into this, and he was mad at the very concept of documentation by now. So what did it? Reed asked. Well, they wouldn't even know, would they? John answered. So we can't learn it from them. Could have been a dungeon, could have been something like Lloyd or the old gun, could have, Lloyd? A tired woman's voice asked. Jessica, their resident biologist, knowledge earned the hard way and only supplemented with dungeon magic. Sorry, what? The last line of defense. James told us not to call it. Reed rubbed at his face. James has a vendetta against proper language use. He is overruled. Call it the last line if you have to. Also, that's a terrifying theory. So, as far as you can tell, they were made to, what, kill dungeons? Kill, monitor, exploit. I mean, they did a little of everything, I think. I think mostly they were made to keep the Northwest U.S. as a low chaos environment. John shrugged, making quotes in the air with his fingers. Again, it's hard to tell, and, I mean, the why is impossible with no one left to ask. Even having cracked most of their code phrases, a lot of their paperwork is either redacted or it just doesn't exist before a decade ago. But, yeah, that's what I have to give you. They were made by someone else. Pretty sure. Someone who might do it again, Reed muttered. Alright, talk to me after this. We'll take it to the council meeting tomorrow. Anything else? You said you got most of their codes? Yeah, John nodded shortly. Already referred the relevant stuff to recovery. There were some addresses. He said it simply, neutrally. Didn't want to get anybody's hopes up. Maybe they can find some of the missing people. Reed winced at the news. It had been so long since their founders' families were kidnapped and mind-wiped, maybe just killed even. They'd kept plugging away at decoding status quo's files, but it was hard for anyone to keep hope going after too long, especially as they learned more and more about the cruel and often lethal practices of their enemy organization. Okay, Reed sighed, trying to move on. What else? Response wants us to try to find something that can work on addictions, Nikhil said. Like removing them, obviously. Maybe not obviously, he shrugged. Anyway, just something to keep an eye out for. One of the interns, a skinny kid with a shaggy haircut, looked around like he had something to say, but wasn't sure about it. Reed refrained from rolling his eyes at how damn nervous all of his people seemed today, and called on him like he was a teacher at the head of the class. Is that a good idea? Which part? Nick asked. 'Cause being able to remove addiction would be valuable, just in general. No, I mean, taking orders from Response. Aren't they kind of, like... I mean, they're the authority around here, right? Do we actually answer to them like that? Reed blinked before making a realization. Oh, he said, snapping thick fingers. No, it's fine. Response isn't... They're not in charge or anything. They aren't giving us an order. They're asking for help. We're actually all part of the same group, you know? Now, when they do stuff like this, we should think critically before shipping them a copied stockpile of magical guns or something, but generally they're less authority and more social workers, with teleporters. This is fine. He sighed. Alright, what's next? Mars, one of their new engineering team, jumped in. I've got a sort of working hardware firewall for a skulljack, he said. It doesn't stop someone getting in if they follow you back, if that makes sense, but it can filter out a lot of hostile actions. The code for it is half derived from one of those emerald chips and half just me, and it's honestly a complete mess, but it is just a prototype. I have a question, though. Those were impressive results already. Reed inclined his head toward the other guy. Yeah, what's up? He asked, ready for what he hoped was a sane and normal question to go along with that engineering competence. Well, if someone's in a situation where someone could plug into them, what stops them from just removing the firewall? Like, it's a hardware piece, right? We're not going to weld it onto people, are we? Reed blinked and saw a number of other people in the room having a similar reaction. From the back of the hall, Chavoy, who had been half napping, pitched forward with her head in her hands. "Oh, God damn it!" she yelled. Reed couldn't think of a good answer to this at all. They'd all just kind of gotten caught up, moving down the wrong track without considering one of the most important implications, that hardware, generally, could be unplugged. Okay, everyone, good progress. We'll burn that bridge when we get to it. And actually, we do need to figure that out. Holy shit, we're all idiots. Okay, I'll make a note. I'll start talking to some people. If anyone has ideas, bring them to Mars afterward. Apparently he's good at this. Reed resisted the urge to rub his head into the palms of his hands. Okay, what's next? What's next that's not going to make me feel stupid? We have a small-scale targetable orange totem working. Like, under a foot this time. Arlo, the man who'd responded, looked super smug about the development. Almost down to the size of the copier. I figure we can get it within a week, and then we're gonna ruin scarcity. Good, Reed nodded. But also, don't... Voices from Davis, Nick, Arlo, Pages of Books, and John all finished Reed's sentence for him at the same time. Don't go too fast, they chorused back. Yes, Dad, Arlo added on, causing Reed to huff out an exasperated breath. Oh, speaking of the copier, Anesh left a note for me, Davis said. They tried copying orbs inside a wallet of holding. Didn't work. Same thing with potions. The running theory is you can only copy one layer of magic. He said he'd get back to us on that, though. He cleared his throat. Not to ruin your totem thing, he added to Arlo. Oh, you... Arlo made an expression halfway between a scowl and the face of someone who had just eaten an entire lemon. It should be fine. Expanding the space I don't think will be a layer in the same way a wallet of holding is. Reed cut off the argument. If that's even what the problem is, I'll go in next week and test with him. Even if it is the issue, it's not like it really matters. Orbs are great, but 400 tons of gold would probably solve the same number of problems. Someone from the back chimed in, voice clear and vibrant. Has anyone tried brewing the copier coffee? Pablo asked. We drink a lot of weird coffee around here. We should drink some of that. I've already done the math. A cup of copier coffee is worth $200,000, given what we estimate the market rate for cancer orbs would be. You want to drink 200,000? I will manage with the coffee that makes me smarter. I take back what I said. Pablo cheerfully sank back into his chair. Reed looked around the space that they used for briefings. A half-dozen quiet chats had started up while he was busy going through everybody's individual things. No one had anything to say right now, nothing big anyway. One day he should probably create a format for these meetings, but for now... Alright, everybody. That's everything for today. Have a good week. Let me know if you need anything or have problems. Remember, safe results more important than blame every time. He waited for all of them to nod back at him in acknowledgement before tucking his phone away and turning to head for the door. Now, I gotta go run tests on degradation rates of organic programming. I'll be downstairs if you need me. Oh, Mars, feed the shells, right? You've got buggy code. Oh, I'm really upset that you're not wrong about that, Mars grumbled as their leader walked out of the room. Texture of Bark Dust woke up feeling miserable. The Camerconda uncoiled from the pile of blankets that they shared with 4 others. Typically, they slept whenever they wanted, and none of them were really shy about casual physical contact with each other, so there was usually someone to curl up with in the sleeping space. Right now, though, only Watcher of Motion was here, pressed up against her side, occasionally twitching in his dream. Texture of Bark Dust appreciated this one. He, like all of her chosen nestmates, liked the quiet, liked their own private thoughts, but his quiet commitment to the order matched her own, and she appreciated it. She tried not to hit him with her tail as she left, and was mostly successful. Camerconda accommodations took up about half of the 4th basement of the order. The other half were human accommodations, but the truth was there was an amount of overlap. Camercondas were not small, and while their shared nests were often normal rooms turned into 2-story apartments with a ramp leading up to a constructed 2nd floor, they could still be at home living with standard Terran furniture. Mostly. Chairs were hard, but the order kept buying beanbags, which Texture of Bark Dust also appreciated. The point was, this basement was for people to live in. And whether that meant living in a space built for you, or sharing a nest or bed that you felt comfortable in, even if it wasn't intended that way, it was still a home to a lot of them. Texture of Bark Dust didn't talk to people about it often, but she felt a warmth at having a home at all. Today that warmth was mostly stuffed down by some kind of strange unpleasant tension in her chest, Her eye felt like it was grinding as she irised it open and shut. Her tongue was heavy in her mouth. It was unpleasant, but none of that changed that she had work to do, so the Camerconda pressed forward. One of the big benefits of living in the lair was that there was a kitchen. Texture of Barkdust opted to take the elevator as the remodel of the stairs into a ramp was not yet complete, and arrived on the ground floor still trying to get her headache to go away. The kitchen surely would help. She slithered her way through the hallway, passing a handful of other early risers who were also up at 6 a.m. She had learned, annoyingly, that both humans and Camercondas did not like waking on a schedule. This frustrated her immensely, because now they were free. Finally, after a crucible that had killed so many of her friends, their community was free, liberated not just into the realm of Officium Mundi, but onto a place called Earth, which stretched for hundreds of millions of square miles, enormous beyond belief, full of wonders and sensations to explore. Who could possibly accept wasting their time frivolously in a place like this? Well, the answer was many of her fellow Camercondas, and many more of the humans that had saved them. It would be inaccurate to say that Camercondas had a culture, but her people had a culture, or at least one they had started to build in their years of confinement. They had small rituals, big ideas, and beautiful art, and most of it had simply not survived contact with the world. Texture of Barkdust would never, ever blame anyone in the Order for this, but it was a truth that her people had been reset, almost. Set back to square one, to figure out who they were all over again. The context of reality was simply too much for what they had derived on their own to stand up to. And yet, how could one be angry when the culture that had done this to you also served you hash browns? Texture of Barkdust settled herself onto a bench and nodded to the kitchen staff who were around at this early hour. Marjorie, the oldest human woman Texture of Barkdust had ever known, gave a winning grin to the green and blue serpent. "Morning, dearie," she said. "Your usual?" It was at that moment that Texture of Barkdust realized she had forgotten her voice. She tried to send the signal through the gifted skulljack, but got no purchase to it. She had left the connector and the powerful small speakers back in her nest. Twisting to make sure she wasn't going mad, the Camerconda confirmed she was voiceless. A creeping dread started to seep into her as she twitched nervously. She couldn't talk. She was wasting time. In an almost overwhelming panic, Texture of Barkdust whipped her head back up to look at Marjorie with a fearful stare, giving the most expressive hiss she could manage from her inadequate organic voice. The older woman either didn't notice or ignored her fear completely. "Still waking up, huh? Well, your usual?" she asked again. Texture of Barkdust froze, as if one of her people had looked at her. Her usual, of course, because everyone here remembered, knew each other, cared. Yes, her usual, please. She gave a bobbing nod. "All right, dear. It'll be a few minutes. Jean's helping me unload the food truck right now." Texture of Barkdust settled in to wait for breakfast, patience being one of those things that was required to not waste further time. You could, she had rapidly realized, take time to think or even do nothing, but still have it be the most efficient use of time if you were waiting. Waiting was interesting. She had waited for years and not even realized it was what she was doing. At 6:15 a.m., exactly when scheduled, Karen sat down across from her and opened a pair of manila folders on the table, sliding one over to Texture of Barkdust. "Good morning," Karen said, already sipping a cup of coffee. "I have our reports from yesterday here. I'd like to get your opinion on how your people are reacting to having authorities. But past that, today is business as usual." Karen paused as the older woman came over. "Good morning, Marjorie. You're here early today. My usual, please." "Of course, dearie." Marjorie gave a similar smile as the one she had presented to Texture of Barkdust as she passed by. "Already cooking. You two are easy." "Mm-hmm." Karen made a neutral noise, while Texture of Bark Dust gave a low hum in the back of her throat. The older woman laughed at the scene while she hustled back to the kitchen to check on the potatoes. I am beginning to suspect that... Are you all right? Karen's face suddenly did that human thing where it changed expressions rapidly, lips pursing, eyebrows raising. You don't look good. Texture of Bark Dust wanted to say she felt fine, but that would have been a now transparent lie, and also she had no voice to say it with. So she gave an awkward hiss, trying to explain, and mostly just drawing a more concerned look as the hiss ended in a wet bark of a cough, which was worrying. Karen gave her another concerned look before standing and walking over to the kitchen doors, calling out to the two women working inside. Keep our breakfast warm. I need to take her down to see Deb. And then the stern-faced woman came back to the table and folded her arms at the camerconda. Are you able to stand? She asked. Texture of Bark Dust was mildly offended. Of course she could. She fell off the bench. Painfully. Her vision blinked momentarily as she hit the ground, and a spike of pain went through her head. Oh dear. Karen's voice was still firm, but there was an undercurrent of compassion and concern to it that Texture of Bark Dust had never actually heard before. That was a very human thing, she realized, that had infected her people's culture, but she didn't mind. She liked it. She tried to hiss at her friend that she liked it, but she couldn't get her lungs to work right. Then, Texture of Bark Dust found herself floating. Well, not really floating. Karen had just picked her up, cradling her body in both arms. She wondered how strong Karen was. Texture of Bark Dust was aware that she weighed a little over 200 pounds. Wasn't that a lot for a human to carry at a jog? Maybe not. She was having trouble thinking. She'd have to do the math later. Her thoughts blurred. The next thing she knew, she was laying on one of the comfortable beds in the medical section, listening as a pair of people teleported in. Voices reached her, as if from underwater. I don't know what happened. She just collapsed, Karen was saying. Deb's voice answered. A simple, fuck, the young lady said. Texture of Bark Dust wanted to frown. She was being very rude. She worried that Deb would set a bad example for frequency of sunlight. The two of them were very publicly together. Another human thing, that style of romance. But frequency of sunlight was so happy all the time. Probably wasn't just from the sex, either. Maybe it wasn't just human. Maybe it was just something new. Something that was both of theirs. Texture of Bark Dust raised her head as a human she didn't recognize helped her turn so she could get a speaker cable plugged into her skulljack. Interspecies romance is a foundational element of a society to sustain us all, were the first words she spoke as the speakers clicked on, the thought slipping out without really her intention. Oh good, she's delirious, Karen said flatly. How do you... the other human started to ask. Please trust me when I say that is not something she would normally say out loud, Karen said. Miss Maris, is this something you're familiar with? Interspecies romance? The veterinary doctor asked, perking up before she realized what Karen actually meant. Or, a camerconda being sick. Deb wheeled a cart of tools into the room, pulling a contactless thermometer off and running it over Texture of Bark Dust's surface. We've never seen one of them sick before, she said. 120, way above camerconda baseline. She has a fever. How hot are they normally? Dr. Maris asked. 1.8, Deb answered, pulling a stethoscope out and searching for the flattest spot on Texture of Bark Dust's surface to listen to her breathing. Sunny's basically a heating pad. She pressed the stethoscope down, going quiet as she listened. I am dying, Texture of Bark Dust replied, in a moment of neutral lucidity. Oh. No. You're not dying, Deb said automatically. Amy moved her hands across the camerconda. No obvious signs of infected injuries, lesions, no growths. Oh, what are you feeling? I'm not used to being able to ask my patients what they're feeling. Is she qualified to be here? Karen's words were mean, but Texture of Bark Dust knew it came from a place of concern. None of us are qualified to be here, Deb snapped back. Barkdust, can you tell us what you're feeling? She reiterated Amy's question. The Camerconda thought for a minute. Annoyed, she decided, trying to nod and feeling her vision swim. Ah. The word, the noise, came out strained from the speaker. My head throbs. I roil inside. Too hot. I am too hot. Texture of Barkdust rotated to meet their eyes. I know this. This is heat rot. It kills us. I am going to die, she stated, as matter-of-factly as she could, but even through the digital medium of her speech, the words were scared. Deb stepped back, eyebrows raised. Oh, she said simply. You have the flu, she announced. I mean, unless this is something really weird, those are just flu symptoms. She looked at the others and motioned them out of the room, the three humans retreating at the observation area to leave Texture of Barkdust to die in peace, alone. What if it is something arcane? Karen's voice came through to her from far away. We need to help with that. She's already had the purple that reduces infection time, Deb says. If she's seen this before it was in that tower, of course she thinks it kills people, but we can manage symptoms. If we can get her through it, she should be fine. I'll prep an IV in case, but regulating her temperature and keeping her hydrated to recover might be enough. Should be enough. What about medication? Some kind of antibacterial, Tylenol, something? Karen asked rapidly. Oh, we shouldn't give her acetaminophen. Amy's voice gave a rapid professional answer. We don't know what she is, not really. It might just kill her. It does to cats. That would be awful. Can I jump back? Did she say interspecies romance a minute ago? Yes, Deb said flatly. Okay, Karen, go find me a few other Camercondas I can interview about this, but don't bring them in here in case it's contagious. She has a roommate. Shit, check with her nest. Amy, run to the kitchen, get me a bag of ice, please. Her temperature is high, but shouldn't be lethal if we can get it down quickly. In the meantime, I'll keep an eye on her. Okay, I'm just curious. Deb sighed. Camercondas are people. They are allowed to date. Texture of Barkdust could practically hear the nurse rolling her eyes. Before you start asking me more uncomfortable questions, yes, Camercondas have primary sexual characteristics. Yes, they are exceptional lovers, or at least mine is. Now get me some ice! Ah, yes! Amy squeaked, her footsteps receding into the lair as she retreated. Either a minute or an eternity later, Deb was back at her side. Texture of Barkdust looked up at her with a narrowed irised eye, trying not to stare at the painfully bright light overhead. I am glad you are with my sister, she said. Do not let her be sad when I die. Okay, you're probably not going to die, Deb said. Unless this is something really weird, it sounds like you're describing a disease we know how to deal with. But, if you can, tell me more about it. We'll do our best to keep you alive. Texture of Barkdust hissed. Yes, being alive would be preferable. She had a lot of work to do today. She had to check on the new members of her people, and had a pair of counseling appointments with 2 members of Response, and she was going to be trying to learn piano with the new mechanical arms, and... Yes, it would be very inconvenient if she died. She might have said some or all of that out loud. It was hard to tell. Focused on getting as much work done as she possibly could, Texture of Barkdust started telling Deb everything she knew. She was sure she did a good job. She knew quite a lot, and the conversation was very comprehensive.